Good Thursday afternoon. My name is Nathan Thompson with the Rapid City Journal, and welcome to City Beat, brought to you by the Rapid City Journal and the City of Rapid City. Today we have a familiar guest. Everybody knows who this guy is, Mayor Steve Allender, to talk about some matters going on here in the city. And specifically, we're going to talk about one topic in particular today, and that's mostly about some of the initiatives that Rapid City is trying to do to address some of the needs for those who are unhoused, or as more commonly known, those who are homeless. And so we want to have a good open discussion and an open dialogue today about homelessness in Rapid City and some of the solutions that the city is working with other organizations to try and address and make Rapid City a better community for everyone. So Mayor, thank you so much for joining us today. And you know, I wanted to open up and just kind of tell a bit of a story here on myself. And you know, Mayor, I was out and about in the city this weekend, and had a friend of mine who was here from out of town. And we went out on Saturday, decided to spend a little bit of time here in downtown. And as we were walking around, I saw what is almost a common sight anymore here in Rapid City, and that is somebody who was without a home. This gentleman was obviously having some sort of distress. He was very emotional, kind of sitting in a doorway, and so I know we always talk about be very cautious in those situations, but I just felt as though it was almost a crisis moment for this guy. And so, I mean, I just sat down next to him and started chatting with him, and he was telling me kind of his life backstory, and I mean, we had a great conversation, but I asked the question, what do you need? And the first question, or the first thing that he said, was that he would like some alcohol. And I know from my previous experiences in larger cities that may not be the best thing to do, or to give cash to somebody. But I did notice, you know, that he had one glove, and I asked him, well, where's your other glove? And he didn't have. It was a cold night on Saturday, if you remember. He didn't have one, and so it just so happened that I had some gloves in my coat, and I just said, here, and said, God bless you. I hope you're going to get what you need. He said that he had been in and out of care centers and in and out of the different programs, and it just wasn't a good fit for him for whatever reason, whether that be his mental distress that he was going through, or his addiction problem. He just said he was going to stay on the street. It breaks, as a humanity, it breaks our heart. But again, this is something that you have addressed and probably have experienced yourself throughout your time in the city. So let's talk about homelessness. Let's have an open and frank discussion about some of the homelessness issues here in Rapid City. What are some of the experiences that you've had, Mayor?
Well, homelessness is a part of the human condition. It's messy, and it's hard to watch, and it creates confusion and conflict about how we're supposed to deal with it, and there are different worldviews on how it should be dealt with, and they're at the extreme of each end of the spectrum. We should do everything for them, or we should do nothing for them. And so my experience as a police officer for 29 years was I worked very close with the homeless. I came to know that organization, the Rapid City Police Department, spends a great deal of time taking care of the homeless, even though the activism narrative out there is that, you know, police have criminalized homelessness and they're abusive to homeless and so on. But there's a great deal of care in how the police deal with homeless. And for this is a little story that I hope you can get, but around the fall time period, when the nights are getting cooler, it has been in the past commonplace to observe homeless people urinating in public or drinking in public or committing petty crimes, police officers then would ticket those individuals with a traffic citation, knowing that they're not going to go to court, so that there would be a bench warrant issued for them. And then weeks or months later, they may find this individual under a bridge when it's below zero outside, the mission's full, the treatment centers are full, we run out of options where to put them, so the police officer would then serve that bench warrant and put that person in jail for the night. So there's no real punishment for that. They would serve a night, they'd be told not to do it again, and the cycle would continue. That's because police officers ran out of tools to keep people alive. So there's a big, there's a history of homelessness in our country, and Rapid City is no exception. So I made a number of relationships. There are some homeless individuals in Rapid City who still call out to me and call me chief from being police chief. And all in all, I think I've had a very positive relationship and a positive influence on how the homeless community is seen. However, one person or one ideology cannot help solve this, something that really can't be solved. The citizens have to determine what level they're at, where they would like to interact with this issue. So another little story, when my daughter was 7 years old, she and I were driving downtown on St. Joseph Street in the far right lane. And the cars in front of us were swerving around something in the road, and we could see this. Well, it got her attention, and she said, "What are they doing?" And I said, "Something must be in the road." So the car in front of us swerved, and we could see that there was someone laying half on the sidewalk and half in the road. And she, the 7-year-old pure soul, gasped and said, "It's a person."
Yeah.
And that sweet little voice saying, "It's a person," just struck me that everyone who swerved around really didn't see this as a person. They saw it as part of the landscape. So you'd think, "Oh, that's horrible, these are all horrible people," and so on. Well, that's all fine, blaming someone or condemning someone's not helping. So I think the lesson here is that these individuals have seen this so commonly in the downtown area, they've become immune to it. So by the way, I stopped, used my car to block traffic so no one would hit him. I got out, helped the gentleman up. He was not intoxicated. He was using a walker. He was partially disabled. He's using a walker, and he started to go down the slope of the sidewalk and tipped over and couldn't get back up. So I helped him up, and he went on his way. And then as I got back in the car and drove off, my daughter asked me a question that's haunted me ever since. She said, "Why didn't someone else stop?" Well, you can't explain to a 7-year-old, "Oh, that's because they see this in every corner," that, that's, it's just too difficult. So to fast forward, in 2013, this state pursued criminal justice reform. In the legislative year was known as Senate Bill 70. It was criminal justice reform, and I was a casual observer of this, even though as police chief you would think I'd have a better role in it, but this was mainly a legislative attempt, and part of the consideration was finding a way to stop the need for additional prison space. Prison's very expensive.
Yeah.
It's questionable how much good it does in the long run, and so on and so forth. So criminal justice reform was started then, and it has continued. So the story I told about arresting people for bench warrants and putting them in jail to keep them out of the cold, that tool has been removed by the justice system. That's not police officers or mayor's job, or city councils can't do anything about that. That's the justice system has concluded that's an improper use of the jail. Okay, that's fine, but now we need more tools. So Rapid City has been building more and more facilities and more options for homeless people, for treatment, for shelter, for rehabilitation, for all this. So now is where the worldview difference comes in. there are people on one side of the spectrum that say, it's rude to say rehabilitation. This is a human being, and no human being needs rehabilitated, so on and so forth. And then someone on the other end of the spectrum saying, I don't want my tax dollars going towards helping someone who's homeless because they're lazy or they're drunk or whatever. So, but in the middle, of course, is where reality is.
Right.
And so we have today in Rapid City more homeless resources than at any other point in our history. And so in 2020, we saw a massive increase in homelessness, where we added no less than 100 new individuals who were living outdoors along the creek. And there is a very common alcohol abuse problem among this group. So that put us in a very awkward position. Also with that condition, with the pandemic, with all the stress, we started losing police officers. There was a record turnover for the 2020 and 2021. So that meant the police had stopped, or at least radically slowed down, the traffic enforcement, the proactive patrolling, because they were taking one call after the other. They become very reactive. So there's an outline of the problem, and now for the solution. So it became apparent that we need a new approach to how the city delivers homeless services. And one of the goals here should be to get the police officers out of that as much as possible, get them back on their primary duties. During the pandemic, there was a point where 65% of all the police department's calls for service had to do with homelessness. That means between them and the fire department, we're spending in excess of $15 million of taxpayer money checking on homeless people, making sure they get referred to the right place, removing them from places they're not welcome, and getting into all this. And so the pandemic also brought us a reinvigorated activism. So now everything we were doing was becoming more and more controversial. And keep in mind, all this time, the police never wanted to be in this business in the first place, but it's no one else's job. So they got stuck with it. So we're trying to reverse that right now.
Yeah.
So the plan, the first half of the plan involves how we deal with the homeless. So we're contracting with a number of private entities and public entities to approach homelessness differently. The council just approved a contract with a nonprofit called Journey On. They're going to do street outreach. They're going to be contacting homeless people where they are, getting to know them, making some relationships, and we're going to measure the early part of success here on the number of contacts and referrals. Among the homeless, there is a percentage who don't want to be there. I believe it's small. I don't have data on how many there really is, but it appears to be shrinking every year.
Right. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that might be something important that a lot of people don't understand is that there are some folks in the homeless community who have just fallen on hard times, and they are needing that lift up. But there are others in the homeless community, I think you use the word chronically homeless, who just that's their lifestyle choice.
It's their life. It's their chosen lifestyle.
Yeah.
They're also factoring into that choice their need for alcohol, their unwillingness to get off the alcohol, their short-sighted, short-term thinking that leaves them on the streets. So anyway, we're going to make all the referrals possible. We're going to try to get those who are unwilling homeless out of there, get them back somehow in the mainstream, more self-sufficient. And then we're left with the group that does not want treatment. And make no mistake, these individuals will tell you to your face, this is where I live. Why would I live anywhere else? I get fed here. People bring me blankets and sleeping bags. All my friends are here. This is where I live. And that person will live to be, if they're lucky, into their early 40s until they die. And so there's a pretty narrow window realistically about when to intercede with someone who appears on the streets as homeless, and if anything can be done. I think it's time for us to admit something can't be done for everyone.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to have the street outreach. We're going to have a behavioral health component, which will be making contacts on the street. A number of homeless people who appear to be intoxicated all the time are self-medicating some underlying mental illness. And you don't get to know that until they've been in detox for a few days, and now you get to see really what's at the core. So we are bolstering our mental health treatment facilities in Rapid City as well. So we'll also have we'll have a number of behavioral health people doing outreach ultimately within this community to try to get everyone figured out where they can go and how they can be helped. So then that leaves the component of then what do you do with the rest, and how do you treat the rest? And this is where the conflict comes in worldviews.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who will say and have said as recently as Monday night at the public meeting that there's a responsibility to house everyone. And this goes back to Bernie Sanders, you know, where he says housing is a basic human right. So it's someone's responsibility to pay for your housing, because housing is a right. So, there's a group, albeit a small group, but there's a group that believes that the city government has a responsibility to build apartments or hotel room size apartments, some type of shelter, so that anyone who cannot or will not be self-sufficient can come and live there. And with that comes food, shelter, clothing, utilities, maintenance, everything else that would go with a typical apartment building. This is a very Pollyannish view of how the homeless should be helped, because also what people don't like to talk about, but which is very evident, is that the homeless community, when intoxicated and when in a group, is a violent community. And every time we take our eye off the ball and leave a group of people together, there's a stabbing or a sexual assault or a physical assault of some kind, and that then makes an appearance in the justice system, and that can never be resolved in the justice system because witnesses won't show, victims won't show. How can you punish someone who needs a place to stay and can't be found on the streets? There's a lot of difficulties with this group. So putting everyone in an apartment complex would be a security nightmare. So now, in addition to food, clothing, shelter, utilities, everything else, now we have to have security to do that. There are people who believe with all their heart that is a basic responsibility of government. There is a much larger group that do not believe that's the case. And your elected officials are elected representatives. So, in essence, what I believe really doesn't matter as much as what the community believes. But it's also my job to be in touch with what the community believes. So I get contacts. I get maybe dozens of contacts a week from citizens who want to share their opinions or their views or comment on a program or a policy. And I work very hard at keeping in touch with the public feeling about things. And so I can tell you that these taxpayers are not about to have someone spend millions of dollars for anyone who is homeless. Because if we built an apartment today, or a capacity for 100 people today, we would need to build one of those probably every year from here on out because of the new people that would come to this area. See, this is all contrary to the group that says, oh, we're going to go down and feed people at the park this weekend. It's very contrary, because these are the ugly details that no one wants to hear, no one wants to believe. So you go down there, you serve hot dogs and soup and bread and things like that, and then you leave and go back home. Now that group is together. They were homeless, and now they're together homeless. Now the alcohol flows, now the violence starts, now the camping in public places starts, now the conflict starts. So it's turned from a very delicate and really dangerous situation for the homeless, it's turned in now to a politically controversial and procedurally difficult scenario to manage. And whatever I say about it will be wrong. Because if I say we should do this, someone's going to say you're wrong. If I say we shouldn't do this, someone will say you're wrong. So don't be surprised if I, with using all my better judgment, and I think this goes for the city council too, once they have an adequate cross-section of feedback and understanding about the community, for us to make a decision and say this is where our position is. So my position today is people really should stop gathering homeless people to feed them. There is food available. There is shelter available, and as it plays out, now back to the worldview, someone is going to say, you're wrong for trying to get people treatment. That's their choice. That's their self-determination. Well, if it's their self-determination, shouldn't they bear the consequences of that self-determination? I mean, so now, everything I've already said, the procedural, the political, the philosophical, all this, and now we're adding more and more layers of gray muck on top of it so that it becomes even harder and harder to solve. So step one, we're rolling out a new approach to homelessness. It's not meant to cure homelessness. It's meant to find those who can be helped and help them. It's also our intent then to manage the remaining group, to keep them from disrupting business, to keep them from wandering in traffic and getting killed, to provide security not only for them but for others. So that's the first phase of all this. The second phase then is to start bolstering our police resources. And those resources that we're trying to pull back from the homeless situation, to get them back on traffic enforcement, back on proactive patrol, and so on, but still faced with our inordinate amount of turnover that we have in that department. We're adding 12 positions to that department in 2022, and then we'll add 6 more positions every single year after that until statistically our police officers are carrying the same load as the national average of police officers. Because right now your Rapid City police officer is at least double the national average on call load per officer. So these officers are tired. They're frustrated. They don't want overtime. They don't want to get called in on their days off. They're beaten down and frustrated. That's not a good situation for a community when perhaps our largest commitment to the public is public safety. So we have to focus resources back there and get this corrected through growth, through refocusing on duties. We have to continue our pursuit to reduce the homeless to whatever extent possible, but also protect them and protect everyone else from that condition. So it's very complicated, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
And it's very involved, and this is what we do not need right now is for someone listening to this to say, you know, I'm going to start my own nonprofit and we're going to go do something. That is completely unhelpful. There are plenty of organizations in town right now that help the homeless. See if they need volunteers. If they don't need volunteers, or if you can't volunteer your time, see if they can use some money. There's 55,000 adults in Rapid City. And I've said this before, 55,000 adults in Rapid City. Imagine if everyone gave $1 a day to go to homeless programming. $55,000 a day in money to go to homeless programming. That's a life-changing amount of money. That is something that we can deal with. Now, after all I've said, after all this that I've said, I want to clarify. The homeless services that we're providing, the facilities that we're supporting, the functions that we're supporting, none of these attract homeless. I don't believe there's a homeless person out there in America that's going to catch this story and say, hey, Rapid City wants to help homeless, and I'm homeless, so I'm going to go there to get help. That's not what attracts homeless. What attracts homeless from other areas is the path of least resistance. The number of free shelter beds that are available, the number of places that serve food, and so on. Because this group is in survival mode. Mm-hmm. The homeless community is in survival mode. They're going to survive today. Tomorrow they'll get up and they'll do that all over again. So it's very short-term thinking. They don't view success as being financially stable in the future. They view it as living another day. Mm-hmm. It's very complicated, and
it certainly is extremely complicated.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking at all of these, and you know, a lot of what you say about, you know, the last thing that we need is another organization to go out and start feeding. Mm-hmm. That's tough for a lot of people to hear. From a humanity standpoint. So whenever you're making those suggestions, talk to us about how our heart should feel whenever we're looking at other solutions. You suggest donating to organizations or volunteering your time. Is that a way in which we as a community can refocus our humanity towards these folks?
It can. I think that, you know, the feeding folks and doing things like that, I think if we're just honest with ourselves, I think there's a little bit of self-reward in all of that. Now that's offensive to hear. But I think we're doing that because we are involved and we can be active and so on. So there's a number of people and groups, I think, that are really helping themselves as much as anyone else. You know, relate this back to your family. So you got a family member who's got some major problems. How do you provide the best help? Is it the best help to buy alcohol for your alcoholic father? Would that be helping your father? Father, what's he want? He wants alcohol. Well, I should buy it. That would be helping him. No, that's exactly the opposite. How can you help? And when should you stop helping? That's important to know when you have to stop feeding this machine that's keeping this problem healthy. So that's hard. I think we need some social science involvement here. We need to hear from some, you know, some psychologists and others who can help us with these philosophies as a community. Because buying someone food every day who will not consider working for it is not helping that person. And I can tell you, and this is anecdotal, and this is a little bit flippant, but I'm going to say it anyway. I have yet to see a malnourished homeless person in Rapid City. Food is not the issue. The issue is that these individuals we see on the street, they have been rejected by their family and their friends. That the family has made a decision, probably a wise decision, to say, we can't have you here anymore because of what you're bringing to the family dynamic. So they're out. And then there's also these rewards that the homeless may experience in being around friends and getting fed and so on. I look out the window in my office and I see homeless folks over in the park, and they're very social. They're always together. They're always shaking hands and hugging, and they're very social people, and they're really very friendly until the alcohol starts flowing. So it's a confusing thing, but we should consider that giving the best help for the homeless is probably not the most obvious and apparent thing to us. These are not starving children in Africa. These are individuals that have deep-rooted problems, and they are the forgotten population. So yes, we have some obligation to them, but we also have an obligation to everyone. That's the balance.
Right, it's the balance between, you know, public safety and taking care of a human need for somebody who very well might be harming themselves.
Right.
So it's an aspect of public safety, compassion, but making sure that we're not contributing to the longevity of the problem.
Absolutely.
Is that accurate, Mayor?
Absolutely. And these type of services, police services, paramedic services, government, you know, all of these services can be delivered in a compassionate way. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean it's going to check the compassionate box on someone who believes that everyone deserves a home. You know, it's a very deep problem. And so now the latest thing is the panhandling signs. And look, these signs do not prohibit panhandling. They do not prohibit people from giving to panhandlers. But I want these signs to empower people, pedestrians, shoppers, whoever they are, empower them to say no. Because when you are alone and 2 or 3 people stand in your path and say, hey, could you help me out? I need $1.50 for a sandwich. Mm-hmm. And you can tell they're obviously intoxicated. I can guarantee you 100% $1.50 is not going to go buy a sandwich. It is going to go buy another bottle. Mm-hmm. And
you know, and Mayor, you know, that's another thing to understand. I was at one of our major retailers here in Rapid City, just doing some general shopping. Mm-hmm. I went out to my vehicle, and a gentleman, he was not intoxicated, but he approached me in the parking lot of this retail center and said, mm-hmm. hey, can you help me out? I need a few dollars for some groceries. And I said, I don't have any money, cash money, mm-hmm. but I tell you what, let's go in and I'll buy you what you need. And I asked, what did he need? Mm-hmm. He just said, hot dogs and hamburger buns, or hot dogs and hot dog buns. Like, fine, let's go in. All right. I don't know if that was the right response in that instance, but it just goes to show that sometimes, excuse me, when people are asking for cash, there might be other ways to handle it. And
sure.
The panhandling signs that the city is in the process of putting up, again, you're saying it's not telling people not to do it, but to empower them to say, you know what, maybe there's a different option I can look at here.
Yeah, and one of those options is printed right on that sign. Mm-hmm. You can, with your mobile device, text the number given on that sign. It will ask you how much you want to donate, and you can submit a donation right there. All those donations go to Black Hills Community Foundation, who already has homeless funding that goes out. That will go to bolster those accounts. Mm-hmm. But you know, these signs are to make people feel like there's another option.
Yeah.
I know some people give money in order to get out of that situation because they feel intimidated. Mm-hmm. I think especially women have had a hard time with panhandling, because I have known of cases where these panhandlers will surround a car or keep a woman from shutting the door when she's trying to leave, or keep her from getting out while they ask for money. That's a very difficult position.
Yeah.
And then, you know, but then there'll be criticism. Well, she should understand that she's, you know, privileged and on and on and on. Well, sure, that's all fine, but she's also scared. Yeah. And that type of thing is not acceptable. It is a thin line away from robbery, mm-hmm. and it is a feeling of a lack of security. And, you know, the police and laws exist not to purify human behavior, because that can never be done. They exist to give us a sense, to show law-abiding people where the limits are, and to give us a sense that someone's watching out for us. So mm-hmm. We provide a feeling of security over ultimate guaranteed security at every turn. Mm-hmm. So these signs have already been described on social media as disgusting and without compassion and mean and so on. But there's nothing mean about them. It doesn't disparage anybody. I mean, you can still say yes. If you insist on giving someone money so they can buy alcohol, or if you want to believe their story that even though they're drunk, they're going to take their money and go to a restaurant, buy some food, give them money. This doesn't take anything away from anybody. But there is definitely a better way to help the homeless. than shelling out $1 or $2 out of your pocket every time someone asks. But I'll guarantee you this, that why are you getting asked for money downtown? It's because people give money downtown. Pedestrians give money. And this is very frustrating for the shop owners because sometimes, especially after hours, but sometimes during hours, there will be, you know, intoxicated people who are urinating on the side of the building or defecating or spitting or doing other things that are very unattractive and do the opposite. Maybe they repel customers rather than attract them. It's not fair to the business community, and it's not something the business community should have to put up with because this is how the human condition is. No, they deserve to be able to have a shot at making a successful business. So again, right around the corner of everything I say, there's potential criticism. Oh, so it's all about the mighty dollar and so on and so forth. Well, you know, the world's got a lot of moving parts. Homelessness is one of them.
Yeah. And it's a difficult situation for all to deal with, and I think when we're looking at this and trying to come together as a community to find responsible answers, there's always going to be animosity and different worldviews, as you said earlier today, about how to address this problem. And so again, for the general community, I would just personally encourage you, treat our homeless community members as humans. They're humans.
As your family.
As your family. They are our family, but also understand that there are limitations to what we may be able to do, and to take those steps to find out what is the best avenue to help this community that is in need. Is it volunteering? Is it contributing? Is it taking a guy into a grocery store and buying him some hot dog and hamburgers? Whatever that might be, there's no completely 100% right answer, and there's no 100% completely wrong answer either. And that's the difficulty that we as a community face a lot of the time.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, Mayor, I appreciate you coming on today to talk about this community issue, this community priority to take care, to the best of our ability, those who need additional help sometimes, and to help the public understand that there are other options out there as well.
Right, and November 15th will be the day we start allowing scarves and mittens to be hung on downtown Presidents. And just since I have your ear, this is not an attempt to provide scarves and mittens to every homeless person possible, as much as it is to keep us aware that there are folks in our community who don't have what they may need, and to be generous and have a generous heart, but also treat them like your family. And it doesn't make sense to enable dangerous behavior. So that's a big deal. I appreciate you having me on so I can talk about it.
Certainly, and we appreciate your candor and your information and sharing your viewpoint as to how we as a community can best address this issue. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And then also some other things that are going on today, basically even related to city businesses. Mayor, I do want to mention that next Thursday is, of course, Veterans Day. So city offices will be closed on Thursday in observance of the holiday. There's also some changes in some trash delivery, so I want to make sure that we also share that information with you. The Rapid City landfill will be closed on Thursday, November the 11th. And there's going to be some changes to the way in which trash delivery will be done. Tuesdays, regular trash and recycling will take place on Monday. And then Wednesday's collection will be done on Tuesday. So everything kind of moves a little bit of a day forward. No collection on Thursday. And then there'll be no changes to Monday and Friday's collection for this week. Also, those who rely upon rapid transit, the Rapid Ride, Dial-A-Ride will be closed as well on Veterans Day. The Monument will have closed access until about noon on Veterans Day as well. The box offices will open at that point because there's a couple of special events. And then all the rest of the city offices of city facilities like the Roosevelt Pool Center and the ice arena will also be open all day that day. Now, for those who are looking to honor our brothers and sisters who have fought for our country, Rapid City is going to have some great Veterans Day programs available as well. So I'll put this up on the screen here for everybody to see. Again, Thursday, 10 o'clock at Main Street Square. There's going to be a special program with some guest speakers and refreshments that will be served. And then something we missed out last year because of the pandemic, the Veterans Day Parade will return this year. Again, the parade will kick off at 11 a.m. It starts at the VFW Post 1273. That's at 420 Main Street. And it will be traveling west on Main Street. So come on out and show your support for those who have served our country. And we here at the Rapid City Journal will also be live streaming that program as well. And then immediately following the parade, the annual holiday luncheon will be hosted by the VFW. Again, that address at 420 Main Street right here in downtown Rapid City. So for all of those who have served our country honorably in the military, we certainly appreciate your service and your sacrifice. And we encourage everybody to come out and enjoy and to pay tribute to those who have served our country during Veterans Day next Thursday. And we thank you for tuning in to this edition of City Beat, brought to you by the Rapid City Journal and the City of Rapid City. I'm Nathan Thompson. We'll see you in a few weeks.